Hello and welcome to the show. We start this week's Tuna Thursday with a Corvette Z06 from a random ice cube. I'm quite surprised to find out that this was the first Chevrolet, I'm pretty sure it's the first Chevrolet, and the first Corvette we've had on this series. I would have thought we would have had at least one by now, because the Corvettes certainly are not the worst of handling vehicles. I mean, okay, they're no Lotus, but they're not too bad at handling, and they have a decent amount of straight line speed. This car in particular has a 498 horsepower, 492 torque. It's not the most powerful car that we have seen, but it's around the 500 horsepower average, maybe a little bit down on power, but it does have a bit more torque than quite a few of the vehicles. Weight-wise, 2,698 pounds. It's not the heaviest car we've seen, certainly, but it's also not the lightest. I mean, the TVR we had out last week, I think it was 2,100, 2,200 pounds, had roughly the same horsepower, admittedly about 100 less torque, but roughly the same horsepower. It's kind of average, this Z06. It's, when you look at the statistics on it, it's pretty much in the average sort of section. Then we come to the handling. It drives pretty much as I expected. It does have certainly some decent turning. There is some decent cornering grip in this car. You can carry okay corner speed, and then you tend to slide it a little bit on the exit. It's very easy to get a little almost overzealous on the throttle and get the car sliding. It's not hard to slide this car at all, which means you have to be quite careful on corner exits. Some of the vehicles that I've had here, once you've got it sort of halfway around the corner, you can boot it and they will just grip, whereas this one won't. If you try and drive this like that, it will just get very, very sideways. So around the turns, it's not quite as good as some of the vehicles. It just loses a little bit too much time being sideways. Under braking, it's pretty good actually. It does get stopped pretty well. I think it's around the 450 mark into that first big braking zone, and everywhere else I didn't have too many problems with getting this car stopped. The other thing that did impress me about it is the way it dealt with curbs. I have to say that you could run the curbs in this car quite aggressively, and it didn't really have any problems. Despite it being a generally oversteery car, you could get away with clonking the curbs quite heavily. I mean, you've seen in this run 3 or 4 times I've clipped the curbs through places, and it doesn't really bother the Corvette. It really doesn't seem to care if you run over the curbs. Lots of cars will get thrown up on 2 wheels, or they'll be pointing backwards in some cases, but this, there is no problem. I mean, if it does get sliding, it's very, very manageable when it does oversteer. It's not like the S2000 we had last time that'll twitch and throw you around in a circle. It is very manageable if you start sliding the Corvette. See, through here, it lifted it a tiny bit on 2 wheels, and that was it. It didn't really lose any time doing that, which is quite impressive. Yeah, a tad oversteery. It's not uncontrollable. It's not really hard to drive. It's just there will be times when you are wasting some lap time by going sideways out of a corner. First turn, though, we have no problem. It's easy flat out through here. It doesn't step out through that turn. It's just the sort of putting the power down that's going to occasionally flummox the Corvette. Up next, we have got a Honda NSX from #GodCar. Now, at the very top of our table, we have an NSX, and I do like these cars. They make for some good A-class vehicles. I've talked about this before. I love this car in Forza 4 for an A-class car. So yeah, I mean, I expect these to be going pretty well. There are some differences, though, between this and our current leaderboard topping car. And the first big one is tyres. This car here is fitted with racing tyres, while the leader car is fitted with, I believe, sport tyres. Now, one thing I have seemed to learn over the last couple of months with Forza 5 is you basically want to run the tyres of the car with the worst tyres you can get away with while having the car still handle okay. When I'm building something like, let's say, a C-Class car, I'll tend to pick a muscle car because I can have humongous rear tyres, like 345s on the rear, and you can get away with running just street tyres on there, and then you can have PI to mess around with handling parts and so on, and you get away with it because the tyres are so big, a little bit of tuning tweaks, and the car will still handle okay. And I'm assuming that's with the NSX that tops the table. That's how they got the power out of it that they do, because this car that we have here is a little bit underpowered, shall we say. 469 horsepower in this compared to the leaderboard topping car, 514. 330 torque, compared to the leader car, 375, and weight, 2,624 to 2,457. So this is basically down on power, down on torque, and a bit heavier, and honestly, when it comes to the cornering, not a huge amount different. In all honesty, this NSX is a little too slidey for my liking. It does have, much like the Corvette, it has good turning, it can carry some good corner speed. But the back end will just let go on you when you don't want it to. It's one of these cars that's very nearly good. It just starts sliding. It's not like with the Corvette, it's mostly on power oversteer that you have a problem with, and sure, you will get on power oversteer with this car as well, but it's just generally oversteering through turns. Makes it a little bit difficult to drive, certainly when you're pushing it very, very hard. When you're on for that quicker lap, you come into a corner and you're just a tiny bit out of position or a tiny bit out of shape. It makes it very easy to completely screw up a lap with this car because it's just that little bit twitchy, just that little bit too slidey. It is a good car when you get everything right. It's when you don't get everything right that you can, or when you get things minusculely wrong, I should say, is when you have a problem. And you've seen a few times I've been getting this car sideways. It wasn't quite as fond of the curbs as the Corvette, but didn't have any major problems with this car. Straight line speed, despite being down on power and torque and up on weight, it was still pretty good getting up towards the 160 mile an hour mark, and brakes were still pretty good as well at getting it slowed down again. I mean, it's still pretty good statistics on this car. And of course, the race tyres will give it better grip than the sport tyres, if you like. It's just kind of, it loses the time because of the oversteer. You can't quite carry the speed because the car will just twitch and get a bit of oversteer. I'm not sure about tyre widths and so on between the two vehicles. But yeah, good car, this one. That was a bit of too big of a clonk on the curb there. Just too oversteery, really, for my liking, and you do waste a bit of time sliding. Up next, from the Creator 224, we've got a BMW 2002 Turbo, with the noisiest turbos I have ever heard on a car in Forza. These are absolutely ridiculous. It basically chirps its entire way around the course with turbo whistle, turbo noise. It's quite incredible. I mean, there was some really noisy Honda Civic Type Rs on Forza 4 that had ludicrous turbos, and the Turbo Rally engine has quite ludicrous turbos, but nothing is as crazy as this BMW's one. Like the rough CTI Yellowbird was named because of it's named the Yellowbird because of the turbos noise. This one is even noisier than that. It's just ludicrous. It's constant turbo noise the entire way around. It is very amusing, I have to say. I do quite like it. But yeah, the turbos are absolutely crazy on this car. On to the figures for it. Well, the BMW is four-wheel drive, and it is relatively light, 2,300 pounds. For a four-wheel drive car, that's not too bad. But that does mean we are a bit down on power, 384 horsepower, 338 torque. Not too bad torque figure. I mean, we've seen that torque figure out of quite a few cars, quite a lot heavier cars as well. Power is not the most impressive of power statistics, but again, it is a relatively light car. There are some concerns with the handling, shall we say, and the big concern with this car is going on the brakes. When you go on the brakes, the car likes to wiggle around. I can't figure out quite what it is. It's not locking the rear brakes, I don't think. It's not quite that sort of... I'm thinking it might be weight transfer. I don't know if the suspension is quite soft and there's a lot of weight transfer to the front and the back end then wants to just wiggle around as it's going. I don't know. It feels very weird in the braking zone. It's quite scary getting this car stopped. Also, we are lacking a bit of straight line speed. It's just about getting up towards 150-ish on the way into the first corner. It's not particularly quick in a straight line. Acceleration is not too bad. It has sort of decent initial acceleration, as you would expect from a four-wheel drive car. You know, it's going to have good traction and good initial acceleration. But yeah, actual top-end speed, it does struggle with. As far as cornering grip goes, that's pretty good. I didn't have too many problems with the bit. You can see it there wiggling under braking. I didn't have too many problems getting this car around the track. We have had some quite oversteery four-wheel drive cars, but this one sticks to the road pretty damn well, I have to say. But yeah, it's the braking that was the big concern, because whenever I came to a braking zone, I was really scared of what the car was actually going to do. I don't know if we're going to see it here. When we jump on the brakes, it doesn't really have quite the right camera angle to show you. It does get stopped pretty quickly. As I said, it's a light car, this one, and without having the greatest straight line speed, you could be quite late on the brakes into the corners, but you were never quite sure what it was going to do with the wiggling around. Yeah, meaning it was a little bit of a difficult car to drive at places. I mean, it wasn't terrible under braking. It wasn't. Yeah, it was just enough to be off-putting almost as distracting as the blooming turbo noises. It definitely wins for most interesting noise from a Tuner Thursday car at the moment. There you go. You can see the big wiggle I got on in the in the braking into that corner. And our final vehicle of the day comes from Major Copyright, and it is a VW Beetle. Yes, a hateful little thing. I'm not a particular fan of the classic Beetles. I don't like them at all. However, I am aware that these can be pretty damn quick race cars. Certainly in C-Class. I built a very fast C-Class one. Horrible thing to drive, but if you did get it around the track, it was very quick. In the lower classes, these can be really very, very quick. Up to A-Class, and they start getting a little bit scary, but I still had some, perhaps, expectations on the Beetle for being a fairly decent car. When it comes to the power, 397 horsepower in this car, 400 torque. No, we do not have the standard Beetle engine. This has the 5.7 litre V8. Weight is pretty damn light, 2,111 pounds. So it's not, okay, again, it's not the most powerful car or the most torquiest, but it is very, very light. So power to weight ratio in the Beetle is pretty damn good. I mean, it's got more power and more torque and 200 pounds lighter than the BMW that you just saw. So yeah, power to weight ratio pretty good. In the Beetle, it's also, I believe, four-wheel drive, which means actually putting the power down, there is no problem. It's not slidey, it's not particularly oversteering. The problem that I have with this Beetle, and the problem that I have with my C-Class one, is that they do not go in a straight line. I don't know what it is. I have absolutely no idea what causes it. No matter what you seem to do to it, you cannot stop it from weaving all over the track. It's not like sort of vast weaves. It's not sort of drunk driving style of weaves around the road, but it's just these little movements that I may have got a little bit of understeer and brush the wall. It's just these little movements when you get up to higher speeds down these straights. It just vaguely moves from left to right. It's really off-putting having the car. It's kind of like a remote control car that has something slightly wrong with the steering and you can never quite set it to go in a straight line properly. This is what the Beetle does. It's moving around on the suspension. I'm not sure if it's too soft the suspension, or I've tried everything fixing my C-Class one and I can't get it to ever go in a straight line, and this one suffers from exactly the same thing. It's a very strange thing to try and drive, because it's just not a problem that you normally have with a car. It's not something that you normally worry about, that you ever think about really in a racing vehicle. As far as other aspects of handling go, as I said, it's four-wheel drive and very light. There is plenty of traction out of the corners, and we don't have any oversteer in this, which is nice. As you saw, I did get a little bit of understeer on bumper wall at one point. The handling was pretty good on the Beetle, and the brakes were also pretty damn good because, well, it doesn't weigh anything, so it does get stopped in a hurry. Curbs were a little bit more scary in this car. I had to be a bit careful of them. That was a bit of a two-wheel moment across that one, and again, more two-wheel moments. But even when I did get it on two wheels, we didn't have oversteer from the car, which is nice. I mean, the fear with the Beetle certainly being a sort of a rear-engine car, and so maybe being rear-engined is what makes the thing wibble and wobble down the straights. That could be it. Yeah, there are certain fears with the thing being kind of oversteering, but I didn't have any problems with that, which is nice. How I like a car to be driving. As I said, it'll get stopped pretty quickly, but yeah. The lack of going in a straight line is rather annoying on this car. We were fine under braking. It wasn't sort of skating around under braking like the BMW did. It was just the actual getting at higher speeds, keeping it in a straight line was a little bit of a faff. On to the times, and I can't quite believe I'm going to be saying this, but the Beetle goes into 8th. It's just a fraction of the GT40, the Ferrari GTO, beats out the Honda S2000, Ferrari Testarossa, beats a Lotus 211. The Beetle that can't go in a straight line does a 24.297. That's a quick lap time. That is a quick. If that thing went in a straight line and was consistent, that could potentially get towards a 23. That's a quick car. It's because it's just so light and got so much acceleration. Yeah, that's quite a ridiculous one. The NSX in 13th, a 24.590. Again, a good time from the car. Just a little bit too oversteering. Just lost a bit too much time sliding around with that vehicle. Further down, we find the Corvette Z06, a 125.205. Again, kind of a bit of an average time, much like the car. It was, yeah, kind of an average time. Again, lost a bit of time with a bit too much oversteer on the Z06. If it was just stop sliding a little bit more, it could definitely get a bit quicker. And we go a little bit further to find the BMW 2002 Turbo 126.099. It just lacked straight line speed, that car. It just didn't have the straight line speed of a lot of the other vehicles, and it was quite scary under braking. But it did make a fantastic noise, so I will give it that. Anyway, that is it for this video, guys. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.